Hi, my name is Ivy Fediplace, and this is my persuasive speech. So unfortunately, I only have one person in my audience today due to some unforeseen circumstances, so we're just gonna roll with it. So, last week I sat at lunch with two leaders from my church. After the small talk, the dreaded question came. So, how many tattoos do you actually have? Though they had good intentions, their older perspective shined bright. So I'll just say this. I'll rip the band-aid off. I am an aspiring woman pastor who has 7 tattoos and no intention of stopping anytime soon. Most of the time, the question that follows after is, how do you plan on getting a job with those? My response to them and thesis for this speech is the same. Tattoos should not be frowned upon in ministry. Contrary to popular belief, tattoos are not unbiblical. Leviticus 19:28 is the go-to anti-tattoo verse. It says this: "You shall not make any gashes in your flesh for the dead or tattoo any marks upon you. I am the Lord." Though it seems pretty clear, there's more to this verse than what meets the eye. Mark Chavlas, a writer for the Biblical Archaeology Review, mentions that there's no reason given by Moses as to why tattoos are bad. According to Chavlas, this probably means it was obvious to the ancient reader, though it's not obvious to us today. That's why the context of this passage is so important. Looking at the big picture, this passage is about pagan mourning practices and idolatry. Because of this, tattooing is usually deemed guilty by association. Also, in the ancient Near East, tattooing was a way to mark slaves. If the slave escaped, they could be returned to their master by the mark on their hand. Biblical scholars hypothesize that tattooing was discouraged in Leviticus because of their history of enslavement. But does this really apply to us today? Does this apply to the free Americans in 2018? Interestingly enough, the Bible even talks about tattooing in a positive light. Isaiah 44:5 says, "This one will say, I am the Lord's, another will be called by the name of Jacob, yet another will write on the hand, the Lord's, and adopt the name of Israel." By saying this, the writer implies that being a slave to God is an appropriate reason to get a tattoo. Dare I take this verse a bit further? Couldn't we say that getting any tattoo, as long as it relates to God, is appropriate? Not only are tattoos not against the Bible, but they are also beneficial for interacting in the world around us. Tattoos can be used for evangelism. According to the North American Missions Board, evangelism should be a natural process and not be forced. At the end of the day, according to the North American Missions Board, the fruit from evangelism depends on the Holy Spirit for its effectiveness. When someone uses a tract, the Bridge of Life, or preaches in the street, no one questions it. Me using my tattoos as an evangelistic measure is just as effective, sometimes even more effective to the younger generation. And so for this point, I have an example of pastors in the nation that have tattoos. So let me pull it up. So here we have some tattoos that have special meaning, and Levi Lesko and Carl Lentz, Nehemiah, you can see that. All Christians who have tattoos and are able to use them as an evangelistic tool in their messages, and just when they go across the street say, "Hey, what does that tattoo mean?" And they can say, "Well, this means God is greater than my ups and my downs." And so that's, I think, just super powerful. Let me pull up my notes again. Additionally, tattoos can be used as a teaching tool. According to a survey done by Pew Research Center, 54% of millennials have either gotten a tattoo, dyed their hair an unnatural color, or had a body piercing in a place other than their earlobe. This survey was taken 10 years ago. Can you imagine what the statistic for 2018 would be? If we switch to looking at Generation Z, we find something interesting as well. In Tim Elmore's case study on Generation Z called Marching Off the Map, he says this: "Students comprehend information when it's connected to a narrative." Using tattoos and the stories behind them are an incredible way to teach the next generation about the love of Christ. And I believe reaching people weighs more heavily than church politics. At the end of the day, the debate on tattoos falls on which generation and denomination you are in. When looking at the life of Jesus, he didn't get caught up in church politics. He didn't get hung up on what those around him looked like. Neither should we.